All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Secure your castle. A proven guide to prevent and prosecute home invasion in the UK, written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Secure your castle. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The trebuchet of tears and the halo of the invader. Destroying genocentric double binds, weaponized hypergamy, and the Marxist state's pathological war on your right to defend your castle. I want you to look at the physical walls around you right now. Do not look at them as drywall and timber. Look at them as the material extension of your masculine logos. Your home, your ham, from the Old English root, denoting a settled, defensive enclosure, is the physical manifestation of your labor and your biological telos to order chaos. Yet if you are a rational man in the modern United Kingdom, your castle is under synchronized siege. The barbarians are not just at the gates, they are in your living room, weaponizing their emotional hysteria, and they are wearing the robes of your magistrates. You have been systematically betrayed by a genocentric establishment that demands the fruits of your provision while legally and culturally disarming your right to protect it. They demand you bow to the pathological altruism of the left, requiring you to bleed for a feminized state that calls your inherent protective nature toxic. Consider the linguistic fraud of the modern overwhelmed damsel. The word supportive derives from the Latin sub under and portere to carry. To be supportive is to bear a load. Yet when a woman feigns being overwhelmed, from the Old English of Wilfian, to overturn or engulf, she is not requesting your structural strength. She is executing a tactical shit test to secure your submission. It is a calculated, genocentric extraction. Major premise: a rational agent manages his own psychological state. Minor premise: modern women offload their anxieties onto men under the fabricated, Marxist guise of the mental load. Conclusion: therefore, the female mental load is not unpaid labor. It is a parasitic transfer of feminine hysteria onto masculine stoicism. She demands you be passionate, but the second you direct that intensity toward a logical goal that does not directly serve her hypergamy, you are deemed obsessive. This is a self-refuting paradox, designed not to inspire your action, but to grant her arbitrary, emotional veto power over your agency. This psychological trebuchet of tears is merely the softening barrage for the physical and legal breach. Look at the tragic, heroic case of Tony Martin. A man defended his literal homestead against feral invaders, and the feminized British state arrested him. The genocracy prosecutes the native, tax-paying male for defending his property because the maternal state demands a monopoly on violence, which it wields to protect the transgressive invader, and cuckold, the law-abiding provider. The state demands you use proportional force, a logical and moral absurdity. Distinguo. We must separate force from violence. Force is the physical energy required to stop an objective evil. Violence is the malicious intent of the invader. By demanding proportional force, the state demands the homeowner meet barbarism with equal impotence. You do not stop a wolf by trying to bite it. You blow its head off with a 12 gauge. To survive this dystopia, you must adopt the sovereign's amusement. You must understand that female ridicule, asking if you can laugh at yourself, is not a search for humor. It is a probe for structural weakness in your psychological perimeter. If you apologize, you fail. If you engage her emotional irrationality with a spreadsheet, you fail. In the following pages, I'm going to arm you with the trivium to dismantle these domestic sieges. We will expose the dark evolutionary biology of hypergamous selective consent, obliterate the Marxist paradoxes of the passionate man, and reclaim the natural law that gives you the absolute, divinely ordained right to defend your perimeter. Plant your flag. Master your emotions. We are taking the citadel back. The trebuchet of tears, defeating the double binds of the domestic siege. Women's emotions are events that they lack the object permanence to realize are temporary. Consider that for a moment. The modern household has become a theater of psychological warfare, where the siege weapon of choice is not the catapult, but the perpetually shifting standard of female emotional satisfaction, a trebuchet of tears that pounds the walls of male reason without cessation. We are told by every medium from the morning talk show to the parliamentary committee that women are overwhelmed, that they carry an impossible mental load, and that men must do more, be more, feel more, and above all, apologize more. I have watched good men, builders, engineers, providers, crack under this relentless bombardment, convinced of their own inadequacy because some nagging voice which they've internalized from the feminist soundscape says they're not supporting enough. Let us fix our terms before we fix our bayonets. Supportive from the Latin sub under, and portere, to carry, means to bear weight from below. Overwhelmed from Old English of Wilfian means to overturn, to engulf, to submerge completely. Now ask yourself, when a woman declares herself overwhelmed, is she requesting that you bear weight alongside her? Or is she commanding you to assume her burdens entirely while she takes to the fainting couch of modern victimhood? The answer, as any man who has survived a long-term relationship can testify, is invariably the latter. The mental load deception deserves particular surgical attention. Magazine articles, therapist offices, and social media feeds overflow with infographics depicting the crushing burden of remembering to buy milk, schedule dentist appointments, and notice when the toilet paper runs low. This, we are told with the solemnity of a papal encyclical, is unpaid labor deserving of compensation, apology, and state intervention. Let us apply the cold blade of reality. In the United Kingdom, the Office for National Statistics consistently shows that when paid and unpaid work are combined, men and women perform approximately equal total hours of work. Men simply perform more paid work outside the home, while women perform more unpaid domestic work. But here is the detail the gynocentric propagandists omit. Men's paid work funds the household, the state, the welfare system, and the very infrastructure that makes domestic life possible. When a man spends 45 hours per week in construction, engineering, or logistics, he is not escaping domestic duties. He is performing the highest form of domestic duty, which is provision. The mental load myth is repackaged worry. Women worry. This is documented across cultures and centuries. It is not oppression to ask adult humans to manage their own anxiety without billing their husbands for emotional labor. The passion-obsession paradox will be familiar to any man who has achieved mastery in a discipline while cohabitating with a woman. "I wish you were more passionate," she declares during a moment of perceived neglect. So you direct your passion toward your vocation, your craft, your mission, the very thing that provides her security and purpose. Suddenly the script flips. "You're obsessive," she complains. "You care more about that than about me." Let us dissect this with Aristotelian formality. Major premise: passion is the intense application of energy toward an object or goal. Minor premise: obsession is defined identically as the intense application of energy toward an object or goal. Conclusion: the demand for passion that penalizes obsession is a linguistic fraud designed not to inspire action but to grant the woman arbitrary veto power over the man's agency. She is not requesting passion. She is requesting performance of passion directed exclusively at herself, while simultaneously resenting the competence that passion generates when directed elsewhere. This is not love. This is a shit test dressed in therapeutic language. The feminist cultural Marxist complex has a favorite weapon: projection. They label masculine drive toxic. Masculine competition becomes oppression. Masculine provision becomes control. Let us perform a reductio ad absurdum on this grotesque framework. If masculine drive is toxic, then every bridge spanning every river is toxic. Every aqueduct feeding every city is toxic. Every electrical grid powering every hospital is toxic. The entire material substrate of civilization which men conceived, designed, built, maintained, and died constructing is toxic. Do you see the madness? The Department for Transport reports that 96% of workplace fatalities in the UK are male. Men are literally dying to keep the lights on, the water flowing, and the roads passable. And the feminist establishment responds by publishing reports on toxic masculinity from their taxpayer-funded gender studies departments. The irony would be comedic if it were not so evil. Masculine drive is the sole engine of human progress. Every great cathedral, every legal code, every scientific breakthrough bears the fingerprints of men who sacrificed comfort for creation. To call this toxic is to declare war on civilization itself. Now we must address the most dangerous weapon in the feminist arsenal, the elevation of feeling above fact. The modern feminized discourse prioritizes how a woman feels over what is logically true. This represents not merely an intellectual error, but a civilizational emergency. When a man acts, he is no longer judged by the objective measure of his deed, but by the ever-shifting standard of her emotional state. Did he complete the assignment? Irrelevant. Did he complete it in a manner that validated her feelings? This is the new metric. This is a direct violation of the trivium's foundational requirement for fixed definitions. If supportive can mean whatever she feels, it should mean on any given Tuesday, then language itself has become a tool of tyranny. Words no longer point to reality. They point to her emotional weather report. This is how civil society decays into primitive, hysterical irrationality. When pathos replaces logos, the courtroom becomes a gossip circle, the parliament becomes a hen party, and the household becomes a dictatorship governed by the ruling passion of the moment. The strategic response to this siege is not supplication, which rewards weakness and deceit, but what I call the method of the amused master. When the trebuchet of tears launches another projectile of manufactured distress, the red-pilled man must embody gravitas, that virtue the Roman philosophers prized above nearly all others. Gravitas is weight, substance, and presence. It is the refusal to be knocked off center by emotional theater. When she declares herself overwhelmed by the children, the housework, and the straits of her difficult life, while you have just completed a 12-hour shift maintaining the sewage system that prevents the city from drowning in its own waste, you do not apologize, you do not scramble, you provide calm, stoic direction. Here is the plan for the evening. I will handle X, you will handle Y. We will reconvene at 8. You are the logistics officer, you are not the emotional shock absorber. A man provides the framework for success. He does not absorb anxiety like a sponge, because absorption of female anxiety only produces more anxiety. It is an inflationary currency. The more you accept, the more she prints. Consider the case of Thomas, a surveyor from Yorkshire who wrote to me describing his marriage's descent into perpetual grievance. His wife would regularly declare herself unable to cope with their 2 children and the household management, despite Thomas working 60-hour weeks and contributing his full salary to the joint account. When Thomas attempted to help, his methods were criticized. When Thomas suggested systems and routines, they were rejected as controlling. When Thomas suggested his wife might be experiencing normal parental stress rather than clinical overwhelm, he was accused of invalidating her lived experience. Thomas was trapped in a classic double band, condemned for not helping, condemned for helping incorrectly, and condemned for suggesting the problem might be manageable. The solution came when Thomas stopped apologizing. He sat his wife down and calmly outlined the division of labor, the budget, and his working hours. He acknowledged her stress without accepting responsibility for it. He treated her as an adult capable of managing her domain, rather than a fragile child requiring constant rescue. Within 3 weeks, the overwhelming burden became manageable. Strange how agency cures helplessness. A fallen society insists that masculine dominance equals tyranny. I maintain that masculine rule is actually grace. Lacking the firm grip of male logic, the home sinks into sentimental disorder. Lacking the objective standard of male proficiency, duties swell to fill every possible grievance. Women require structure exactly as a garden requires a stone wall. Tear down the barrier and weeds overtake the blooms. The statistics validate this thoroughly. Studies routinely prove that women express greater happiness and life satisfaction in conventional marriages featuring distinct male leadership. The feminist establishment has understood this reality for decades and has hidden it with the zeal of a medieval inquisitor silencing heresy, simply because admitting the truth would ruin their entire doctrine of oppression. Look at the family courts. Look at the suicide statistics. In the United Kingdom, men account for approximately 3/4 of all suicides. Think about that number. For every woman who takes her own life, 3 men do the same. And the feminist response? More funding for women's mental health services, more initiatives to support mothers, more campaigns against toxic masculinity. The disposability of men is not a bug in the gynocentric system. It is a feature. Men are useful precisely insofar as they provide, protect, and die quietly. The moment a man questions this arrangement, he is labeled dangerous, unstable, and toxic. The moment he demands equal treatment under the law, he is reminded of his privilege. You have been betrayed by institutions that were supposed to protect you. The police will arrest you for a social media post while ignoring the false allegations that destroyed your family. The courts will extract your wealth while denying your children. The state will tax your labor to fund the very ideologies that demonize your existence. To bow to the irrational demands of the double band is to surrender the castle of the mind to hysterical invaders. The red-pilled man holds the line with logic, refusing to apologize for his natural, divinely ordained telos. You were made to build, to protect, to provide, and to order chaos. This is not toxic. This is transcendent. This is the good, the true, and the beautiful made manifest in masculine form. Every great civilization understood this. Every lasting culture honored the masculine principle as the logos that brings structure to the void. Only in this decaying age of feminist superstition have we forgotten what every previous generation knew instinctively, that men are the architects of reality, and women are the inhabitants of the structures men create. When the architects are mocked, the structures collapse. Look around you, the cracks are everywhere. The remedy is not more apologies. The remedy is logos. I watch the pathological machinations of this gynocentric leviathan, and I see the grotesque reflection of a biological treachery that extends far beyond the courtroom and into the very spiritual marrow of the West. The Tony Martin case is not a mere legal anomaly. It is the macabre sacrament of a feminized zeitgeist that instinctively despises the competent, protective male, denying him his imago Dei, while romantically infantilizing the transgressive invader. To comprehend why the state reflexively crucifies the native defender and canonizes the predator, we must first lance the festering boil of gamma bias that poisons our media framing and ruthlessly dissect the sinister, hypergamous logic that dictates the selective enforcement of compassion. The halo of the invader, hypergamous selective enforcement, and the disposable native. Consider the tragic yet profoundly revealing case of Tony Martin, a solitary Norfolk farmer who in August 1999 was confronted by the literal manifestation of our decaying civilization. 2 serial burglars who had invaded the sanctuary of his home. Martin defended his life and his property, firing a shotgun into the darkness, killing one of the intruders and wounding the other. How did the British state, once a fortress of common law and natural rights, respond? They prosecuted the native. They dragged the homeowner before the courts, convicted him of murder, later reduced to manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility, and threw him into a prison cell to rot alongside the very wolves he had fended off. They let the surviving invader, a career criminal, out on parole to threaten Martin's neighbors. This is not justice. It is a gynocentric occult ritual, a punishment of the masculine defensive instinct. When a man protects his home, the feminine state, acting on a corrupted maternal instinct that infantilizes criminals and detests the self-sufficient male, sees him not as a hero, but as a threat to its monopoly on power. In the twisted logic of the modern Leviathan, the invader wears a halo, and the native man is the devil. To understand this grotesque inversion of justice, we must define our terms through the lens of eternal natural law. Property, from the Latin proprius, one's own, is not a socially constructed abstraction. It is the material extension of a man's labor, time, and very being. The axiom of subsidiarity, the bedrock of Western political thought, articulated beautifully in the Thomistic tradition, dictates that the family unit is the sovereign, primary social organ. The state is merely the servant, existing to protect this micro-kingdom, but in a gynocracy disguised as a liberal democracy, the state has flipped this hierarchy upside down. By stripping the native male of his right to exclude, whether it is excluding an intruder from his living room or excluding ideological pathogens from his children's curriculum, the state violates the fundamental law of Property NL 6. They demand you open your gates to the barbarians, and if you dare to raise a shield, they charge you with the crime. We see this vividly in the genocentric family courts, where a father's sovereign right to his offspring is routinely severed to extract alimony and child support, transforming the sacred duty of fatherhood into a state-mandated toll farm for the disposable native. We must diagnose the media's weaponized framing of this dispossession, a psychological operation I call gamma bias. Turn on the TV and you will witness the argumentum ad misericordiam, the appeal to pity, deployed at civilizational scale. When a woman suffers the slightest emotional inconvenience, the broadcast frequencies weep. It is framed as a national tragedy demanding totalitarian legislation, sensitivity training, and the immediate restriction of male liberties. Yet, when a man's home is invaded, when his children are alienated from him by a malicious family court, or when he takes his own life in the desolation of his state-enforced exile, he is a mere statistic, he is ignored. Why? Because the genocentric order categorizes the native male as an unperson, a utility to be extracted from, not a human possessing imago Dei, SP1. He is the ultimate other, the one who builds the civilization, pays the taxes, and dies in the wars, yet is systematically denied the spiritual dignity and basic human rights afforded to every other demographic. This brings us to the dark evolutionary biology underlying the selective enforcement of these laws, a phenomenon rooted entirely in female hypergamy. Hypergamy, from the Greek hyper above and gamos marriage, is the biological imperative to mate across or up in dominance hierarchies. It is the unseen hand guiding the state's perverse tolerance for the invader. Let us apply a rigorous syllogism to expose this hypocrisy. Major premise: if the feminist concept of affirmative consent and legal protection were applied universally based on objective ethics, the status of the male actor would be entirely irrelevant. Minor premise: the history of human sexuality and modern legal practice proves that female consent dynamically scales in direct proportion to male power, transgressive dominance, and outsider status. Conclusion: therefore, modern feminist legal standards are not objective moral truths, but biological hypergamous filters weaponized to police the reproduction of average, law-abiding men. The feminist state applies the exact same biological algorithm to the nation's borders and its courts. The charismatic, rule-breaking invader is granted implicit psychological consent by the feminine psyche, while the low-status, rule-abiding, native provider is subjected to puritanical, weaponized regulations. The modern Marxist insists that we live under a patriarchy, a phantom designed to justify the endless extraction of male utility. Let us drive a stake through the heart of this lie. A patriarchy is a system where fathers rule and protect their families, passing down wisdom and property to their sons. A system that actively sacrifices its native sons to appease the boundless appetites of the maternal welfare state is not a patriarchy. It is the exact opposite. It is a gynocracy. You are told you possess privilege while you are the only demographic that is a net contributor to the tax base over a lifetime. You fund the very welfare checks that subsidize the invaders of your civilization, while you are denied the fundamental right to defend your own bedroom. It is a monumental satanic con. The remedy for this existential rot is not to write letters to your captured, effeminate parliamentarians. You cannot reason with a system that is biologically and pathologically invested in your destruction. The rational man must embrace aphobia, the strategic refusal to participate in a rigged game. You must starve the beast of your compliance, your labor, and your emotional investment. Men must build parallel systems and male-only spaces, SO1, where merit, logic, and objective justice, untainted by the hypergamous distortion of female consent, can flourish. Retire from the game board, withdraw your surplus provision, and fortify your own spiritual and physical castle. When you stop feeding the parasites, the entire Babylonian Tower of Woke collapses under its own dead weight. I watched a man destroyed by this exact dynamic last Tuesday in a Bristol conference room. His wife, flanked by a solicitor funded by his own pension contributions, levied a catalogue of grievances so theatrical it belonged in a pantomime, not a courtroom. He wept, he apologized. He produced spreadsheets proving his innocence as though logos could penetrate a wall of pure pathos. The magistrate, a woman trained in the sacred texts of critical race theory, nodded along like a bobblehead on a dashboard. His crime? Insisting that his home was his home, hers. A righteous blow against imaginary oppression. This grotesque theater is repeated daily across the aisles, and it succeeds because men have been conditioned to parry emotional blades with logical shields, a strategy as futile as arguing taxonomy with a wolf. The remedy is not more logic deployed against hysteria. The remedy is the absolute refusal to accept the frame itself. The sovereign's amusement, frame control, ridicule, and the crucible of security. A man's worst difficulties begin when he is able to do as he likes. The tragedy of the modern male is not his lack of freedom, but his total inability to wield it. He is handed the reins of his own life and immediately hands them to the nearest emotional tyrant. I have watched this happen repeatedly in boardrooms and bedrooms, in police stations and family courts. The British family court system processes over 50,000 private law applications annually, and in approximately 93% of contested residence cases, mothers receive primary custody. The state has become the enforcement arm of the feminine imperative, and the average man walks into its maw apologizing for his own existence. This must stop. It stops when you understand the mechanics of secura, the etymological root of security, meaning literally without care, free from anxiety, untroubled by the chaotic emotional demands of those who would tyrannize you through your own conscientiousness. The Latin rhetoric gives us ridicule, the act of laughing at another. And I tell you now, female ridicule is not banter, it is not play, it is reconnaissance. She is probing your perimeter for structural weakness, and if you flinch, you have already lost. Consider the shit test for what it truly is, an evolutionary stress response mechanism designed to verify male competence. When a woman says, "You take yourself too seriously," she is not making an aesthetic observation. She is asking whether your confidence is structural or performative. If it is performative, she will puncture it, and she should, because performative confidence in a crisis gets people killed. The Greek tradition calls this dokomasia, the public scrutiny of a man's character before he is entrusted with authority. She is running a continuous dokomasia on you because her evolutionary hardware knows that a man who collapses under verbal pressure will collapse under physical threat. The tragedy is that most modern men fail this test spectacularly, not because they lack courage, but because they have been trained to respond to emotional attacks with logic. This is like bringing a dictionary to a knife fight. Behold the syllogism that will liberate you from this particular circle of hell. Major premise, magnanimity, the classical virtue enumerated in every serious Western ethical treatise from Aristotle to Aquinas, is precisely the absence of need to defend one's ego from trivial attacks. It is magnanimitas, greatness of soul, the refusal to be diminished by smallness in others. Minor premise, the female shit test is, by definition and observable reality, a trivial emotional attack completely lacking in logical substance. It is pathos masquerading as logos, and it deserves to be treated with the same dismissive amusement you would offer a toddler threatening to hold his breath. Conclusion, therefore, the logically consistent, virtuous, and evolutionarily sound response to a shit test is absolute, unbothered amusement. Not anger, not hurt, not defensive citation of statistics, amusement.
Anything less is a failure of reason. I once watched two men handle the same verbal assault in a London pub. The first, call him the Gamma, responded to his girlfriend's public taunt about his salary with a detailed explanation of market conditions, tax brackets, and his projected earnings trajectory. He produced a spreadsheet on his phone. I'm not inventing this. He literally showed her a spreadsheet in a pub while she laughed and called him defensive to her friend. The relationship ended 3 weeks later when she slept with a man who could not tell you what a spreadsheet was, but who told her to shut up and buy the next round. The second man, call him the Sigma, was accused by his date of being too quiet, probably weird. He looked at her, smiled faintly, and said, "I'm quiet because I'm deciding whether you're interesting enough to bother with." She stayed for 3 hours. The lesson is not cruelty. The lesson is that logos does not negotiate with pathos. Logic does not defeat emotional manipulation. Superior frame does. Frame is not aggression. Frame is the solid ground on which you stand while the flood rages around you. The modern genocentric order demands male vulnerability with the fervor of a Spanish inquisitor demanding confession. You have heard this demand from therapists, from magazine articles, from that peculiar species of man who writes apologias for his own masculinity in exchange for feminine approval. The demand is a trap. It is intelligence gathering dressed as intimacy. When you confess weakness to a woman, you are not building connection, you are handing her ammunition. The statistics bear this out with chilling clarity. The cynical deployment of disclosed vulnerability in family court proceedings is a documented phenomenon. With approximately 40% of contested divorce cases involving allegations that map precisely onto prior confidential disclosures, the etymology is revealing. Vulnerare means to wound. True vulnerability is standing in the agora and speaking truth when the mob howls for your silence. True vulnerability is a man refusing to lie when lying would profit him. Weeping because you feel misunderstood is not vulnerability. It is emotional incontinence, and it repulses the very women who claim to desire it. Women will routinely deploy the rhetorical weapon of collective male guilt. Men are you men. This is the fallacy of composition, and it is incidentally the same logical structure undergirding every totalitarian ideology in history. You do not bear guilt for actions you did not commit. The Western legal tradition, from Magna Carta's guarantee of individual justice through the centuries of common law refinement to the modern presumption of innocence, rejects collective guilt entirely. Individual men are responsible for their individual actions. This is not negotiable. When a woman says men are trash, she is not making an empirical claim. She is conducting a loyalty test to see if you will betray your own sex to win her approval. The correct response is not all men, which is defensive and therefore weak. The correct response is amused dismissal. What a curious thing to say about the sex that built every structure you have ever relied upon for survival. Then change the subject. Do not argue, do not justify. See Kura. The model for this stance is not the sniveling modern Ali, but the warrior king archetype embedded deep in the Western canon. Christ before the Sanhedrin did not apologize. He did not explain himself. He did not attempt to win over his accusers through emotional display. When mocked, he answered with piercing economical truth. When Pilate questioned him, he responded with a question that has echoed through 2 millennia. Sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did others tell it thee of me? This is frame control perfected. He seized the dialectical initiative. He refused the frame of the attacker. The man who stands on logos, on objective truth, on the law of identity, on the principle of non-contradiction, does not require the agreement of any woman to validate his existence. His confidence is not derived from feminine approval. It is derived from alignment with reality itself. This is what the medieval tradition called recta ratio, right reason, and it is the birthright of every man willing to claim it. The practical application requires mastery of specific rhetorical forms. When she says you're so arrogant, the response is not denial but redirection through chiasmus. I'm confident enough to recognize arrogance when I see it, and I see it in your accusation. When she deploys antithesis, you care more about being right than about my feelings. You reverse the structure. I care about truth.
because truth is what serves your feelings in the long term,
whereas comfortable lies destroy them. This is not sophistry. This is the correct application of the trivium to rhetorical combat.
You define the terms, you control the frame. You respond rather than react.
The etymology of respond is responder, to promise in return. A response is a choice. A reaction is a reflex. Women test for the presence of conscious choice because conscious choice is the hallmark of the masculine principle, the logos that orders chaos and builds civilization from the raw material of the world. The man who masters this amusement, who can observe the emotional storms of others without being swept into them, discovers something extraordinary. The tests diminish. A woman who cannot destabilize you stops trying, because the attempt itself confirms your strength. This is the paradox of the crucible. The fire that was meant to destroy you forges you instead. You emerge not hardened in the sense of callous, but tempered in the metallurgical sense, flexible without breaking, sharp without being brittle. This is the temper of the masculine soul tested against the eternal feminine, and it has produced every great man in the Western tradition. The tempered man laughs from a position of unshakable strength. The untempered man laughs at himself to appease a woman, becoming the jester in a castle she ultimately controls. Choose your laughter carefully. It reveals everything about the fortress you have built. Secura without care, secure in the truth that no emotional tyrant can storm a castle whose king has mastered himself. We have established the psychological architecture of the unmoved master. Now we must fortify the physical walls that house his legacy. The state's demand for proportional force is a macro-level shit test, measuring your submission to an order that values the hypothetical rehabilitation of a felon over the absolute safety of your bloodline. It is a logical obscenity that insists the householder handicap himself against a feral invader. I refuse to accept a legal framework where the protector is prosecuted for protecting. We must define the territory we defend, not by the fraudulent statutes of a corrupt parliament, but by the ancient law of blood and soil, recapturing the citadel, natural law, lethal defense, and the prosecution of evil. A man's home is his castle, is not a cute antique proverb for cross-stitch pillows. It is a blood-sworn axiom of natural law, forged in the Anglo-Saxon ham, meaning a physical dwelling encircled by a defensive perimeter, a settlement of bloodkin, and an estate of sovereign duty. The ham was the geographical anchor of a free man's imago Dei, his divine image as provider, protector, and progenitor. To threaten the ham was to threaten the man's very ontological purpose, his reason for drawing breath. When a home invader crosses your threshold uninvited, he does not merely trespass against brick and mortar. He commits a metaphysical assault on the transcendental good. He attacks your property. Yes, but property is merely labor made physical, and labor is the currency of masculine love. Therefore, the invader attacks your love. He attacks your family. He attacks your vocation. He attacks your bloodline. He attacks God's architecture of reality. The modern British state, rotting from within by the fungal bloom of cultural Marxism, has forgotten this. It has chosen the side of the invader. We have not. Let us fix our grammar before the snakes slither through the definitions. Force, from the Latin fortis, meaning strong, is the physical energy required to arrest an evil action. Violence, from the Latin violentus, is the malicious, disproportionate imposition of will upon an unwilling victim. The state, our bloated gynocratic nursemaid, conflates these two terms deliberately. It instructs you, the householder, that you may only use reasonable force proportional to the attack. Let us dissect this absurdity with the surgeon's scalpel. Major premise: to stop a threat, you must apply sufficient countermeasures to neutralize that threat. Minor premise: a home invader, by definition, operates outside the bounds of reason, having abandoned the social contract to prey upon the innocent. Conclusion: demanding a homeowner apply reasonable force to an unreasonable aggressor is a performative contradiction. You do not reason with a rabid dog, you shoot it. You do not apply proportional force to a man high on MDMA who wants to cave your skull in with a crowbar. You apply overwhelming terminal force until the threat ceases to exist. To demand a man fight fair against a man who has already discarded fairness is to demand the righteous man fight with one arm tied behind his back.
It is a rigged game designed by cowards to punish the courageous. Consider the tragic, infuriating case of Tony Martin. In August 1999, a reclusive Norfolk farmer was burgled for the umpteenth time by the same feral underclass that the welfare state had bred, fed, and weaponized. Martin shot two of the intruders, killing one, a 16-year-old with a rap sheet longer than his life. The state's response was not to pin a medal on Martin for his public service. It prosecuted him. It convicted him of murder, later reduced to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Diminished responsibility. The man defending his ham was declared mentally defective, while the serial predators were rendered victims of disproportionate force. This is not justice. This is the pathological altruism of the state, the toxic femininity of a wicked mother run amok. It prioritizes the hypothetical rehabilitation of the deviant over the absolute inviolable safety of the innocent son. It is a violation of subsidiarity, the sacred principle that matters should be handled at the lowest, most local level possible. The family is the first institution, the state is the last. When the state tells a father he cannot defend his own children in his own home, the state has declared war on the family. It has declared war on reality itself. They will tell you these blobby, rainbow-lanyarded, state-employed sociopaths in cheap suits that you have a duty to retreat from your own home. Let us define our terms again. Retreat from the Latin retrahere to drawback, acedia. From the Greek acedia, a state of listlessness, a refusal to engage with one's duties, a spiritual torpor. The legal doctrine, demanding you flee your own castle, is not prudence. It is cowardice dressed in a judge's wig. It is the ultimate act of acedia, the refusal to be, to stand, to hold the line. A man who retreats from his own threshold has abandoned his post. He has forsaken his vocation as protector. He has declared to the world and to his sons that his home is not worth defending, his wife is not worth protecting, his honor is not worth the blood it would cost to maintain. The red-pilled man does not retreat. The red-pilled man plants his flag, sets his feet, and says, "Here, no further." This is not bravado. This is the cardinal virtue of fortitude, feeling the fear, acknowledging the risk, and acting anyway because duty demands it. But the state hates fortitude. The state worships at the altar of the herd, where the highest virtue is passivity and the lowest sin is competence. The state wants you docile, dependent, and dialing 999 while a stranger ransacks your daughter's bedroom. Why? Because a man who cannot defend his own home will inevitably look to the state for protection. A man who cannot provide his own security becomes a supplicant to the gynocratic leviathan. This is the great scam. The state creates the chaos, open borders, defunded policing, revolving door justice, and then offers itself as the only solution. It is the arsonist playing fireman. And you, the taxpayer, the net contributor, the man who funds this entire circus, are expected to play the victim. You are expected to die quietly, or at least apologize for the mess your blood makes on the carpet. Enough. The syllogism of moral duty is a weapon, wield it. Major premise: the cardinal virtue of justice demands that good is rewarded and evil is punished. Minor premise: home invasion is an objective evil, violating the natural law of property, life, and lineage. Conclusion: therefore, the use of lethal force to stop a home invasion is not merely a legal right, it is a moral imperative rooted in the transcendental good, obligatory for any man who claims the title of father, husband, or citizen. You are not defending furniture. You are defending the logos. You are defending the principle that the good exists, that it has a right to exist, and that evil has no right to consume it. To fail to defend your home is to concede that evil is stronger than good, that chaos is more powerful than order, and that the barbarians have already won. Properly understood, the family operates as a mixed constitution, the most stable and enduring form of governance ever devised. The father acts as the executive, charged with defense and ultimate judgment. The mother functions as the legislature, managing the domestic sphere, nurturing the young, and shaping the culture of the home. However, the father holds the veto. This arrangement is not oppression. Rather, it represents operational efficiency. It embodies the natural hierarchy of competence, a division of labor grounded in biological teleology. The state's assault on your right to defend your home is at its deepest level an attack on this constitutional order. The state intends to overthrow the father, render him impotent within his own kingdom, and substitute his authority with the cold, clumsy, indifferent fist of the bureaucratic maternal. Their message rings loud. You are not competent to protect your own. We are. Surrender your arms, your authority, and your autonomy, and we will handle it. Yet they do not handle it. They cannot handle it. They merely manage the decline and bill you for the privilege. So what do? You prepare. You harden the target. You turn your home into a tactical puzzle that no opportunistic scavenger can solve without bleeding. You reinforce the doors with steel plates and 3-inch screws. You install motion sensor lighting that turns night into day. You establish a safe room, a final fallback position where your family can shelter while you hold the line. You rehearse the plan with your household, treating it with the same gravity as a fire drill. You ensure that every member knows their role, their route, their rally point. This is not paranoia. It is prudence, right reason in action. It is the virtue of the prepared man, the man who refuses to be a victim of his own negligence. You also arm yourself, within the bounds of UK law, with tools that can stop a threat. A baseball bat, a heavy torch, a wasp spray with a 20-foot range, a kitchen knife kept in a logical, accessible place. The law says you may use what comes to hand. Ensure that what comes to hand is sufficient to the task. And if the worst happens, if you are forced to strike, understand that the battle does not end when the invader falls. The second battle begins when the police arrive, and this is where most men fail. They fail because they do not understand the grammar of the police interview. The police are not your friends in that moment. They are functionaries of a system that is institutionally suspicious of self-defense. They are trained to extract confessions of disproportionate force. They will say things like, "Do you feel you went too far?" Or "Don't you think you could have just pushed him out?" These are not questions. They are traps. They are the verbal equivalent of a tripwire. Do not step on them. Say nothing beyond this. I was in fear for my life. I defended my family. I want him arrested. Do not apologize. Do not explain your feelings. Do not speculate on what you could have done differently. The trivium is your shield here. The grammar is fixed. You are the victim. He is the aggressor. The logic is clear. You use necessary force to neutralize a threat. The rhetoric is minimal. State the facts, nothing more. Let your solicitor do the rest. Every extra word you utter is a rope they will use to hang you. Stand in your citadel. Feel the weight of the keys in your pocket, the solidity of the walls around you, the warmth of your family asleep upstairs. You are the living embodiment of the true, the good, and the beautiful, a fortress of sanity in a world gone mad. The state may disapprove, the feminists may screech, the cultural Marxists may write their little papers. But when the glass shatters at 3 in the morning, they will not be there. The police will not be there. The social workers will not be there. Only you. Only you, standing between the darkness and the people you love, armed with logic, armored in virtue, and defended by the absolute moral authority of natural law. This is not violence, this is the highest form of love. And it is your sacred, irrevocable duty. You have walked through the fire and forged your spirit in the crucible of absolute truth. Look at the ruins of the gynocentric matrix you have dismantled today. You now stare down the trebuchet of tears and see the overwhelmed damsel for exactly what she is, a poorly calibrated siege engine of emotional blackmail designed to breach the walls of your competence. You have unmasked the halo of the invader, recognizing how hypergamous, selective consent punishes the rule-abiding native male, while enthusiastically rewarding the transgressive outsider. You have mastered the sovereign's amusement, realizing that a woman's ridiculous shit test is not a plea for your vulnerable tears, but a desperate radar ping searching for the unmoving bedrock of your masculine frame. Look at the empirical wreckage of the feminized experiment if you possess any lingering doubt about the necessity of this awakening. We are ruled by a gynocentric asylum where men comprise over 75% of all suicides, a staggering statistic of silent sacrifice utterly ignored by a media obsessed with fake wage gaps. We endure family courts that function as butcher shops. treating fathers as automated teller machines extracting wealth from men to subsidize female hypergamy, while society tries to gaslight you into celebrating a non-paternity rate that quietly mocks the very concept of fatherhood. We exist in a diseased, decaying civilization that aborts millions of unborn children under the grotesque banner of healthcare, while simultaneously arresting British fathers for the unforgivable crime of raising their voices to protect their own children from state-sponsored imported predators. They call your provision toxic and your justified righteous defense disproportionate. They invert the logos, renaming cowardice as de-escalation and pathetic submission as vulnerability. But you are no longer a compliant serf in this matriarchal Babylon. You are a man endowed by your Creator with the imago Dei, possessing an inalienable birthright to subdue the earth and aggressively defend the boundaries of your physical and psychological castle. To secure your home is to secure your very soul. It is a profound, inescapable act of the transcendental good to build walls of solid oak, to lock the heavy gates against the chaotic invaders of the welfare state, and to stand atop the parapet armed with natural law, absolute virtue, and the trivium. When the degenerate state demands you retreat from your own hearth, it is literally demanding acedia, the cowardly, effeminate refusal of your own masculine being. You must flatly refuse. Plant your boots firmly on the floorboards your own labor paid for. Grip the tools of your defense, and declare to the Marxist hordes and their weeping, manipulative dupes, this far and categorically no further. Take this armor of unbreakable logic, share this gospel of the red pill, and go forth to rebuild the ruined citadels of the West. You are the master of your domain, the watchman on the wall, and the unyielding, unapologetic architect of a civilization reborn. Now go wake the others. And now the sponsored book introduction, Secure Your Castle, a proven guide to prevent and prosecute home invasion in the UK. Your home isn't safe, not from invaders, not from courts, not from the ideological rot that's turned basic survival instincts into crimes. I learned this the hard way when a meth head kicked down my door in Sheffield, screaming about needing cash. He left with a broken nose, I left with a lawsuit. The judge called me reckless for tackling him. The burglar got compensation. I got a lesson. Britain's war on masculinity isn't theoretical, it's in your living room with a crowbar. This book is for men who refuse to apologize for existing. Fathers who'd rather face a jury than a child's coffin. Sons who still believe honor means something. If you've ever been called toxic for wanting to protect your family, mocked for hanging a Union Jack, or bankrupted by a divorce court that handed your home to squatters, you're in the right place. We'll dissect case law that jails farmers for shooting armed robbers, legal castration, how courts disarm men, expose how divorce settlements turn houses into gang targets, the divorce industrial complex, and revive medieval tactics that make invaders flee, from castle moats to laser alarms. Soft men should stop here if you think proportional force means asking a rapist to kindly leave, or believe police will arrive before your daughter's throat gets cut. Go knit a rainbow flag. This isn't a sensitivity seminar. It's a field manual for realists. You'll learn why 91% of burglars avoid homes radiating alpha energy, criminal minds fear alpha males, how to rig legal traps that maim without lawsuits, boiling oil to AI defense tech, and why judges who side with criminals hate your DNA, the Stone Age mind in a woke world. Biology doesn't care about feelings. Testosterone primes men to defend territory, a fact bureaucrats pathologize as dangerous. Meanwhile, neighborhoods with single-mother homes suffer triple the burglaries. Coincidence? Hardly. We'll dismantle the feminist myth that unarmed pacifism protects families, the myth of gender-neutral defense, and spotlight jury strategies to crush corrupt prosecutors, jury nullification, breaking the system. Your ancestors didn't build empires by seeking safe spaces. They secured borders, so will you. Or you can keep trusting a system that rewards invaders and punishes heroes. The choice is simple. Arm your mind, fortify your home, and sleep knowing you've weaponized reality, or keep playing victim while they take everything. Your castle awaits its king. Act like one.
Secure Your Castle, a proven guide to prevent and prosecute home invasion in the UK, written by Conrad Riker.
Buy now, links in description.